Nice meeting you. Ready?
Oh, wonderful.
Okay, I met you. Well, nice to meet you.
He didn't get here.
Both of them. I was in Guam. Wow. I'm almost a Danish man. What a tiger.
Yes.
I should have.
We're good.
I'm not.
I'm doing well. No, I'm
okay. We'll see you.
Baltic walk.
Let's do that.
You want, or just.
I'm still here.
All right. Everybody have a chair? Are we all good? Not, we can pull some from on top. All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming. Super excited to have you here. And we have incredibly eminent, spectacular speaker today that I'm very excited about introducing. Dr. Okhee, and I will introduce Dr. Lee in a second. But before that, and before everyone leaves at the end, I want to make sure that you know that we have some other things coming up. We have a Know Your Rights training that we are planning for September 24th. It's still in the works with the details, but you'll hear about it. It'll be here. It'll be in an Lunch and Learn slot. Know Your Rights training has to do with immigration and sort of anti-ICE and immigrant protection. We'll do that. We also have Jade Nixon joining us from NYU. Learning to do research with, not on, youth participatory action research with Black and Indigenous young people. This is also going to be an incredible talk. And now, without further ado, actually, Jade. All right, now I am super excited to introduce Dr. Okhee Lee, who is the Peter L. Agnew Professor of Education in Steinhardt School of Culture, Education, Human Development. She received her PhD in educational psychology from Michigan State University, and over her long, illustrious, and ongoing career, has become a leading scholar in equity-centered science education with particular focus on multilingual, justice-oriented. Her work centers on integrating science and language learning so that all students, including multilingual learners, can fully engage with the rigorous science practices. She's developed large-scale curricular and teacher professional development programs such as SAIL, Science and Integrated Language curriculum, has been deeply involved in major standard setting efforts, including being a member of the writing team of the NGSS, the Next Generation Science Standard. She's also served on two important committees with reports from the National Academy, Science and Engineering in Preschool through elementary grades, the brilliance of children and strengths of educators. This came out in 2022. This report explores how to enhance science and engineering during early childhood education, elementary, and earlier report building capacity for teaching engineering K-12 education from 2020. And this report provides guidance on how to expand and improve engineering. Dr. Lee has received numerous awards and honors, among them distinguished contributions to science education through research award from the National Association for Research in Science Teaching, that is the leading organization for science education. The ARA, American Educational Research Association, including exemplary contributions to practice, engaged research award, Division K Innovation and Research on Equity and Social Justice and Teacher Education award, Distinguished Career Contributions award from the Committee for Scholars of Color in Education, National Science Teaching Association, Distinguished Service to Science Education, Korean American Educational Researchers Association, inaugural Distinguished Researcher Award, and Dr. Lee is also holds multiple fellowships, National Academy of Education Fellow, American Association for the Advancement of Science Fellow, American Educational Research Association, Kurtz Fellow, School of Education, University of Academy, and National Academy of Education. Doctoral. Well, this goes on. I have for a while our concept on multiple times. It is truly a great honor to have you here. It's not the first time, and I think that like SNL, like if you come one more time, we'll get you a check for the science series. So without further ado, Doctor. Thank you.
It's an honor to be here. I so much appreciate you spending your valuable 1 hour today, so I will make it worthwhile. If I don't say anything really important, I can say that I first introduced myself as, please call me Okhee. And then I thought I am Shakira of STEM education, my first name. So I dropped Dr. and Lee and Okhee. And then if I were ambitious, I'll just become Okhee without attaching to Shakira. In addition to eminent, I plan to be funny, so I'm going to delve into the issues very directly. When I'm done with my joke and humor, I'm going to talk for about 25 to 30 minutes and leave enough time for Q&A. If there are any questions about how NSF is doing, as I serve in a little committee, and how the National Academy is doing in terms of pushing the field as some leadership role, I'll be happy to discuss some of the national level trends and movements during discussion. Now, before I start, your eminent dean is here, so you know that you should behave. I got my point. There we go. If you are thinking of me talking about language education, that will come last. The reason I will be talking about language education is because the current emphasis on language in the service of doing something, language for the purpose. So I'll be talking about STEM education, and language will fall into STEM education because it is language in the service of. And I will say a little bit about language at the end of in the service of students, in the service of STEM, in the service of. And here we go. So these are the three topics that I want to talk about. One is conceptions of equity, and the second is where we were in STEM education, but also language traditionally in the past, contemporary, currently based on the framework in science education and the next generation science standards currently. And then there are several proposals for future approach. And I would like to add my own thinking on where we may go. And if you ask me at the end, is that where we are going? I don't know, given the political landscape right now. So that's where nobody, so that's those. And then the third is, so what we are working on, this is center of the STEM education. I would like to, I said, I will not be talking about the language specifically, but I will mention it. I would like to say that I'm really committed to research, policy, and practice and intersections. I do not consider myself as a scholar only. I counted about the hundreds of talks just to bring the field together, but I also like policy through standards in science and STEM, but also standards in language so that the three come together. That's really, so even when I say STEM education, navigating STEM education at the intersections of a research with a goal toward changing the policy to the future and bringing to practice together. they merge. And that my commitment to bring the three research policy together, or sometimes it confine me not to be too progressive, and I bear the consequences of it. The system can do only so much to move forward. So I am aware of the trade-offs of pros and cons. All right, here we go. Systems of equity and justice. Actually, I'm doing the homework for you so that you can cite if you get criticized for you. So here is a NASEM document. Even though it's a STEM, it applies to many other fields. Here is a NASEM's report that Rabbit mentioned in 2022 is based on the work by Philip and Azevedo, who proposed continuum of equity along 4 approaches. Think of it, continuum. So here are the 4 approaches along the continuum. Now, what is important are 2 things. One, they would say that each has the Philip and Azevedo, and that based on the short commentary that change the discourse. So you never know when you write a key piece that is a long, impactful commentary that shapes the field. It's very humbling. I know, big guy. So each approach has a strength and pitfalls. That's important. There is nothing, this is the right way to do, that is the right way to do. Now, each brings affordances and limitations, and that's really important. The second is that it's an alphabet soup of words, and it's important to realize how we use the terms interchangeably without distinction, but there is a reason for using these terms to indicate certain ideas. So the first one on the bottom is that increasing opportunity and access to high quality science and engineering learning and instruction. You can see opportunity and access is the entry point. I have to get to the door to start. If I'm not at the door, I don't go anywhere. So opportunity access is the first step of the continuum. The second, you can see that achievement, representation, and identity. I achieve in science, I represent my group, and I have the identity as a STEM learner. I can be a scientist. So that's a second along the continuum. Thanks for nodding. That continuum. And then the third is, but why science and STEM have been defined by the traditional Western modern science. It's not right. Women were forgotten, minoritized groups were forgotten, and other groups are forgotten. So it's a questioning, interrogating the way the disciplines have been done. So that's the third of questioning what concept. And then the fourth is moving to, it's not fair. There is a systemic opposition in science, STEM, and just every aspect of the society. You see the continuum? That's a continuum. And so when we use opportunity access, that's entry. Once I'm in, I achieve. I have the identity. And now I know STEM. I'm questioning why STEM has been this way. And then I need to change the system for what the systemic operations. It's a continuum. Thank you for nodding. You know that that's a communication?
Yeah.
Now, that's a 2022, and that studied as the NASEM National Academy. And then, so here is equity. The equity is defined through thinking policies, barriers. It's achievement, representation, identity, and justice is it's addressing and rectifying the systemic operations that operate in STEM, disciplines and education. So that's equity and justice. You see the flip, it's a questioning the system. Now, based on this definition, then the recent document on, again, NASEM is exclusively equity in STEM education. So building on the identity equity in the 2020 document, it offers, this time, it's not continuum, it's a 5 distinct categories of equity. I'm making the distinction between continuum and 5 different categories, although there is a notion of continuum. So you would like to know what those are, 5? Here we go. The 5 frames for making decisions for equity are reducing gaps between groups, it's achievement gaps. Expanding opportunity and access, that's the first step of the 2022 document. The 3 is a heterogeneity of STEM learning environments, and it's not just the learning in school, but it's is a community. It's not just a science about indigenous ways of knowing, and multiple ways of knowing. So it's expanding the view. The fourth is that beyond that, we need to promote justice, if you remember justice as the previous definition. And then, because this is about equity for the future, sustainability is in. It's much more progressive into the future of starting from achievement gap to achieve. And then it's a multiple ways of knowing, including indigenous, and then justice and sustainability. I just did the homework so that you don't have to read. There we go. So I am defining equity as opportunity and access for achievement of identity within the way STEM disciplines are defined without inherent necessarily. The justice is why the system is set up that possesses certain rules over others. That's the flip. Are we cool so far? So this is my rendition of my childhood. We talked about equity. You see that? Inequality. Some people have a whole lot more than our three most wealthy people, three people combined will have $1 trillion of that's equality. So you can see that everybody shares the same amount of resources or tools, but the kids still cannot see it. Equity, distribution of resources so that everybody can see. That's equity. So equality and equity are really constructs. And then it comes, I still cannot see well. If I don't have resources, I'm still blocked out. So this is more of opening up justice that everybody can see it. And then but you can say that there still is fence. When I play, so you can think of a justice along the continuum of now I can see the baseball, but I wanted to play. I consider transparency, liberation, and joy being part of. So that's a continuum of the current what I consider justice movement. So that's equity and justice, and I'm going to continue into, I'm looking at it. So here is traditionally that we do not have to describe it. Scientists and teachers know what science and STEM are. And this is codified as a canonical knowledge of science or STEM. And it goes down, and some students learn science, but it doesn't make sense. Most of it. It's about science, students in the service of science. The flip happens here. And I am delighted that I was a part of the NGSS. So here, the mantra is that all students have equitable opportunities for access, achievement, identity as I'm a science learner. And then students are making sense of phenomena and solutions by the scientists and engineers. I'm doing science. I'm not learning science. I'm doing it. I'm figuring it. And then I am a scientist and I'm an engineer and I have an epistemic agency. That's NGSS. So that's the current that we are doing. So here is a very briefly of a science in 101. Students are doing phenomenon of a home community makes lots of garbage. Every time I see food, where does it go at the end of the meeting? That's the question. The question is what happens. It's a local and phenomenon and universal. So that's the phenomenon. And now we have the phenomenon. I would like to figure out what that means. If there is a very few students are sorting the garbage from their lunch, and they are doing three-dimensional learning. Science people would know, so I don't say three. By the way, we worked with the Elizabeth School District, and I'm eternally grateful for the administration. And so here are just quickly, there are 8 Fascinating practice, students are asking questions, and they're also looking at patterns, and they're learning about the properties of materials. And so students are doing three-dimensional learning. And this is the unit. It doesn't start from properties of a matter or structure of matter. It starts from the garbage. I know I'm known for talking trash. That's my. The phenomenon is a driving instruction, not science. The students are asking questions over the course of a unit. And then as they are learning science, as they are doing science, they are learning science. And it's the same approach with the language. Used to be that I don't know English, so I have to learn vocabulary and grammar, and I'm limited English proficient students. This time, I have a brilliant ideas while I'm learning English as an additional language. I'm doing science, I'm using language. Now as I'm using language, I'm learning language as a product. So the agency, the students, including students are learning English as an addition. So that's a contemporary, and we are moving. So our work was cruising along, and I thought, all right, I also did the computational thinking and modeling, and I thought that my career is pretty much all set through retirement. And then happened COVID. 2020. And this is 5 minutes from my apartment building in New York City, the Washington Square Park. How many people do you see? Oh, how long? A year. It's a surreal. You couldn't say that, okay, you picked out every single person on the photo. That would have been a lot of work. So we just became very somber through the pandemic. Then climate change and the sustainability and political situation. So it has been, and I would like to say one word for the early career scholars, those who went through the pandemic and thought that you are over it now. Another pandemic. I would like to ask you to be resilient and push it through. And also for senior scholars, the Dean and Clark and Judith, Janice, it's our job to support our early career scholars. And the Academy, National Academy is thinking very seriously about how we support early career scholars. And even people at NSF that is by politics are struggling what to do. So we are all in. So what does it mean? Now you can see that I know something about pandemic, right? During the 5th grade, we started with a landfill. Students are doing garbage and they're doing landfill. And then my realization during the pandemic was that we sanitize the phenomenon. We started with a landfill and we ended up with science investigation. Instead, so here is a student doing vinegar and baking soda. Whoa. The balloon inflates. If you're an English learner at Nation, inflates is an academic language. More than bigger or like that. So that's we have to do the academic language. You know, it's bigger. So inflate. But if you ask students about, can you explain? I don't know. Yeah, I can explain. I don't know what to do with it. And that was the traditional. Contemporary students have to know the baking and vinegar soda and baking and vinegar because they have to explain where that smell comes from. And smell is the chemical reaction of reaction. So they have to know science to be able to explain. And the future approach is the realization that we started with a landfill, and we should end with a landfill, and we should explore a landfill and its impacts on the communities, why some are disproportionately impacted and others are not. So that's the realization of how we sanitize our work. and how we should start. So far? Well, here is now, before I start. So during that time, since the NGSS 2013, there have been research programs that push the boundaries of moving into the future. So I can think of Megan Beng and her group doing indigenous knowledge and learning in places. I can think of the Angie Club, your colleague Angie Claes Barton and Edna Tan, rightful presence that we have the safety and the right in the city of a sanctuary city. We can think of Dan Morales who talks about the high school students are going to the community to investigate the chemical reactions and how the Chicago, the pollution impacts as justice-centered STEM education, and I am just blocking out a couple more, but there have been research programs, so we are moving along. Then, so I would like to contribute to another way to think about, and again, my motivation when I started was that I would like to push not only the research field, but I would like to impact the standards. I was thinking of what would be the next iteration of a standards beyond the NGSS, in the policy. So here is my thinking, my research teams are thinking. And what is important is the direction. It went down on the students, but it starts from the students. And we keep the students. But this time, the focus is more on not only learning what happens to my lunch garbage, but when the lunch garbage to go to a landfill, where the landfill is located and which community is impacted. That's a justice issue. So here is all students are doing justice and to explain why and how they can design solutions that in the service of the communities. And students are doing advocacy, activism as informed and responsible citizens. So it's not doing activism for the sake of, but it is based on the understanding of a discipline, questioning the discipline, but using the discipline to do activism. That's one. The second is that when I hear educators saying, when students grow up, they will become, and I say, we need to stop saying they will. They are, and they should right now. So it's changing the discourse of what we expect the students of. Little kids who shouldn't know, little kids who will become. No, the young people who are doing right now. So here is this. We can think of what counts as science and STEM subjects, what role phenomena problems in societal childhood play, and how students learn science and STEM subjects. And again, you can see what contemporary, the NGSS community after a decade after publication, the science education community was thinking about the next iteration of the standards. So I was thinking that I can help the science community to put through the next iteration. That was my intent of study. You can see that in the case of a traditional what counts as a science, science is a canonical knowledge. That's a science. And then once you know science, you apply science to the real world example. You apply after you know. Or you confirm your science in a lab to test it, but the center is science. In the contemporary approach, it's students are scientists and engineers who make sense of, who explain. So the focus is on science in the service of explaining. So the matter and molecules in the service of explain what happens to my garbage? Then, so the problems and phenomena are the center, And students are doing science to make sense of as scientists and engineers. That's the contemporary. Now, in the proposed approach that we're doing, that what is the starting point? Yes, it is a phenomenon or problem as a scientists do to explain why and design solutions. But this is not sanitized phenomenon in the science classroom. This time we are advocating for societal challenges, the epidemic, pandemic, climate change. By the way, NSF rejects environmental justice if it's in the proposal title. That's illegal. Environmental justice. Not aligned with the administration's priorities. So we're talking about some of those societal challenges that are essential that young people are doing. I don't know the status at this point. And then students, once they know why, and then they are doing advocacy on behalf of and they are informed citizens. So what is important is that when you think about the societal challenges, like even say weather crisis, the food jet desert, where the nuclear reaction sites are. These are challenges that societies are facing without clear answer. So that's a real STEM. But who get affected? Which communities? It just baked in. Once you say these are societal challenges, some groups are disproportionately impacted than others. And it is inevitable to think about justice. So if we do science first, and this is what society does first, then who gets ignored? Minoritized groups who don't have a place at the table. It's so baked in. Smacks out. We forgot. Pandemic is the same thing. Who got the vaccines first? Who got the treatments first? It's just so. But then there are, okay. But then there are communities who do in their own ways to have the assets and importance. So that's, so here is what the work that we do. Couple of minutes. So you can see that the storyline so far has been once you put societal challenges beyond the phenomena and problems as center, then you cannot do only engineering or science. It just opens up all requires multiple disciplines to come together, not just a STEM discipline, but social sciences and all come together to solve the problem because it affects in every aspect of life. Yes. And then once you say it's a challenge to society, justice is right there and it is impossible to ignore. So we should learn lessons from COVID-19. And here is a beyond equity into taking action and advocacy. So here is what we do in our current work. The driving question, you can see that as being a science person and pushing from the next iteration of a science standards, so starting from driving question of how were people impacted differently by the COVID-19 pandemic. Once you did different, then it becomes rich groups versus other groups, becomes that, right? Disparities. So the first one is a societal challenge, and there is a beautiful photo of Maggie Alvarado. Here is a story. So here comes the multilingual learners. It has been multilingual all along. She was a 10-year-old kid in Los Angeles, and she called in a radio station to get information for her parents who are essential workers. The parents are speaking Spanish. So the call goes something like, "Hello, Maggie, what question do you have?" And here comes 10-year-old girl. "I am calling to find out about the COVID because my parents got sick, and I'm afraid that they get sick again. And then and then she would speak to her mother in Spanish, and she would translate. And it just galvanized the language issues of why some groups they get the information faster than other groups in terms of all the demographic data. So we're doing data science. The students are looking at the national and international and local computer science, and they're doing engineering. So when you combine at the, so here comes first students are figuring out, oh, so how are people different? Here come the first row, students are figuring out that. Then it goes into, let's look at the data. Now, this is not curated data. These are real data, like Johns Hopkins data, Walden data, CDC data, the real data that students are visiting, and they are navigating, and they have a real fun time navigating and finding out. These are what the data sources that adults use. Okay. So they are looking at the data, and then after they look at the continent and nation, they're going into 5 boroughs so that they go into global and local. Why is it important? I live in Bronx. My community got impacted disproportionately more than Manhattan. But also I'm from Chile, and I know what Chile did during the pandemic. So they bring in international or transnational knowledge with a local knowledge. And the Brooklyn that I visit is the Dominican Republic in DR. So I would get avocados. Okay, so there is this transnational, but also local, all transcending like that. And then the students go. So once they get into the 5 boroughs, it becomes so obvious that Bronx and Queens were impacted disproportionately more than Manhattan and Brooklyn. And it goes into why. So students are going into why, and they are looking at, well, let's look at the frontline work and the household and living arrangement, meaning crowded housing and frontline work. Why? When you think about frontline work, what was the CDC guideline for frontline work? Frontline work, essential workers, stay home. Can you? No. Do you see it? No. Can you stay home? No. Think that is 6 feet. Avoid the crowds. Stay home. Now, when you say about crowded housing, can you keep 6 feet apart when you live in multi-generational housing? No. In fact, the Dominican Republic community, the Hispanic community would say, that is an asset. We live in multi-generational houses because we value the elders. So it goes contradicting. So there is here science and the community values contradict each other. It's in addition to justice issue. So students are reading, this one is also interesting. The students are reading the article that information goes faster in English than languages other than English. So some groups got vaccines later and got the information slower. It's a double. So students are doing the engineering of, all right, if they are bilingual people to go through, then what is the impact? So they are doing computational modeling again until they do the engineering of what can we do about it. So it's an attempt to navigate the STEM disciplines as COVID-19 required multiple STEM disciplines to deploy all of them to solve design solutions. But also it's looking at international because it was a pandemic. But local, within my community. So my community also reflects international because we come from different communities. So language design, we are looking at transnational, multimodality, translanguaging. That's in progress later, Dahlia. And we have been writing about them. And thank you. And we have about 17 minutes. Thank you so much. People like to ask questions and challenging questions I may ask, but they told me to stop, but I'm really open.
We can stop, who is, Choyo, we can stop the recording. I think that's fine. That'll free up for people to ask whatever they